So this is it, the final Fallout New Vegas Iceberg. If you're watching this for the first time, we're actually on our third and final Fallout New Vegas Iceberg on the channel. They aren't parts of a whole, but they're fully designed icebergs from the tip to the bottom layer. And this last one is possibly my favorite. Of course, we have more icebergs on the way in the Fallout universe, so make sure you subscribe and stick around so you don't miss out on those. Enjoy, guys.
You must be the stranger I've been hearing about. Sorry, but I'm strictly forbidden from offering our tech to outsiders like yourself.
God damn.
Let's be real. New Vegas has a reputation system unlike anything else in the series. Every faction doesn't just love or hate you, they track you. Fame, infamy, neutrality, it all matters. And sometimes doing a little bit of everything unlocks something strange known as Wild Child. Honestly guys, it's kind of a cool status name now that I'm saying it. You get it when your reputation with a faction becomes so erratic, so contradictory, that they don't know whether to fear you, trust you, or just keep their distance. The in-game description puts it best saying, quote, "Your wild, seemingly capricious behavior leaves people scratching their heads in confusion and avoiding close contact," end quote. Most players write it off as a flavor title, but there's more going on here, especially with the Brotherhood of Steel. If you've ever tried to trade with the Knight, the Brotherhood Quartermaster, you'll know her inventory is locked behind reputation. Most people try to go full idolized to gain access to her full arsenal. That's the expected route. But the game offers a more unique method if you're labeled as a wild child or sitting at a mixed reputation. And in this case, she'll actually sell to you at cheaper prices. You lose access to her rarest gear, sure, but basic items are weirdly discounted. It's as if the Brotherhood doesn't quite know what to do with you. You're too unpredictable to be cut off entirely, but too dangerous to give full trust. So they offer you just enough to stay on your good side. It's a small detail in the scheme of the game, but one that reveals the nuance of the New Vegas reputation system. You don't have to be a saint or even a villain. Sometimes the best perks come from walking the line chaotically and unpredictably.
Please, sir, take pity on us. Free us, please. You think we can make it? You really do? Freedom!
There's a quiet killer build in Fallout New Vegas, one that doesn't rely on heavy weapons, power armor, or even brute force. Instead, it relies on something a lot of players overlook on the character creation screen. Admittedly, I'm the type of player who usually doesn't leverage the luck perk as much as I should. At first glance, luck seems like a throwaway stat. Maybe it helps in casinos and maybe it tweaks your crits a little, but most players dump it to boost strength or intelligence. If you start the game with luck at 9 and then layer on a few key perks and equipment, you can become a walking critical hit machine. First, take the finesse perk. It gives you a flat 5% to critical hit chance, effectively the same bonus as adding 5 points of luck. Then add better criticals, a perk that boosts your critical hit damage by 50%. Combine that with the first recon beret, which adds +1 perception, and more importantly another 5% crit chance. With luck at 9, finesse, and the beret, your character has an effective crit chance of 19% to 24% depending on the weapon. And that's before considering weapon-specific critical bonuses, VATS multipliers, or sneak attacks. And once you start stacking crits, it snowballs. You start melting enemies before they even realize they're in combat. Guns like the Cowboy Repeater, this machine, or Rat Slayer suddenly become devastating. And if you're using VATS, I'm the type of player who doesn't focus on exact stat maxing, so layering luck with guns, apparel, and even more perks isn't something I've considered opting for on a playthrough. But I just might now.
You ever stumble into a cave in New Vegas and think, wow, this place seems chill, probably just a few bugs or coyotes, and then you're suddenly jumped by a rat the size of a small car. Yeah, that's the rodent of unusual size. These massive mutated rats are a hidden little feature you only find if you've taken the Wild Wasteland trait. And true to form, these aren't just any rats. They're a parody of classic rodents of unusual size from The Princess Bride.
Rodents of unusual size? I don't think they exist.
You can find them in a couple of locations, the Brockflower Cave, the New Vegas sewers, and sometimes even in Vault 11. But only if you've got the Wild Wasteland active. And let me tell you, they're not just oversized background Easter eggs. Compared to the standard giant rats you might be used to, these guys are beefed up with higher HP, stronger attacks, and a much bigger model. It's kinda like Obsidian just clicked scale times 2 and let them loose in the wild. We have no background lore on these guys, and we don't really know why they exist canon-wise. Mostly it just seems to be a joke, clearly. We have talking toasters, stealth suit AIs with attitude, rats the size of bears, but one of the most bizarre, unsettling, and low-key tragic things you can encounter is a Brahmin skull named Antler, and it is worshipped like a god. You meet Antler in the Repcon test site, where you'll find a group of Nightkin who've taken over the facility. These Nightkin, if you're not familiar, are the stealth-obsessed super mutants who served under the Master back in Fallout 1 and 2. But the big twist is they've all been driven a little, or a lot, insane from overusing stealth boys. Constant cloaking eventually messes with their minds, and this place is basically one big psych ward without the nurses. Enter Davison, the Nightkin in charge. He's convinced that Antler, a literal bleached cow skull sitting on the table, is giving him divine orders. He doesn't make decisions without consulting Antler. He doesn't trust anyone who questions Antler. And if things go wrong, that's because you didn't listen to Antler. At first, it seemed kind of funny. A towering 7-foot-tall mutant taking commands from a skull. Classic Fallout absurdity, am I right? But then it gets darker. Davison isn't a joke character, he's tragic. He used to be part of something bigger. Now he's just wandering the Mojave with no purpose, no structure, and a mind cracked in half by tech his body wasn't meant to use long term. Antler isn't just a skull, it's his coping mechanism. During the Come Fly With Me quest, you can negotiate with Davison and the Nightkin to get them to leave Repcon peacefully. But to do that, you'll need to help them find missing stealth boys, or convince Davison through dialogue that continuing to follow Antler's orders will only lead to more violence. And if you do it right, he'll actually thank you and say that Antler agrees with your plan. I see Antler brought up a lot in theories about how maybe this thing is an actual god or a god speaking through it. And as we know, Fallout doesn't shy away from the eldritch lore that we get. Maybe it is a god speaking through the skull trying to help these super mutants. Even the meaning of Brahmin means it's a member of the highest Hindu caste, that of the priesthood. It's a very spiritual thing. But in reality, I think it's a way to showcase Davison's schizophrenic tendencies. He had to create a being superior to himself to help cope or control his own emotions. It's honestly deeper than you think.
Primm Slim at your service. Authentic cowpoke and official spokespot of the Vicky and Vance Casino and Museum. Yeehaw!
At first glance, Primm Slim is a joke character since bro is literally a tour guide for the small-time museum in the Vicky and Vance Casino. Slim is a friendly, slow-talking Securitron with a cowboy hat and a busted-up programming routine. He's one of your options to become the new sheriff of Primm after the town falls into chaos. Would you ever think he could become the strongest NPC in the game? There's a hidden detail in New Vegas' code. Primm Slim's hit points scale with your level. As the Courier levels up, so does Slim's health quietly and invisibly, until one day he's an absolute unit. By the time you reach level 40, Primm Slim has the same amount of HP as a legendary bloatfly from Old World Blues, one of the deadliest and tankiest enemies in the entire game. But what happens after level 40? Well, Slim just keeps scaling. His health keeps climbing, eventually giving him more hit points than any other NPC, enemy, or boss in the entire game. Obviously, he doesn't carry a fat man, and he's not even remotely akin to a Deathclaw, nor is he even hostile. So it's kinda cool that one of the strongest NPCs in the game is on your side. If your main concern is keeping the town safe, then this makes him canon-wise the best choice for sheriff. NCR's got politics, the Legion has even more politics. But Primm Slim? He's a literal tank with a badge and a hat. He doesn't feel pain, he doesn't feel fear or fatigue. So while the NCR may have troops and the Legion has zealots, just remember Primm. They have a Slim.
My leg!
To some players, Sergio doesn't exist. He's just a myth, a name dropped by the King in Freeside, an elusive hairstylist who supposedly resides in the King's School of Impersonation. He's mentioned once after you use your favor to officially join the Kings. The King says, go find Sergio. He'll hook you up with the proper look. So then you go and search for Sergio, the Zoolander of the Wastes, but there's nobody out there that goes by such a name. To complicate things even further, there's also no marker and no dialogue change after this combo with the King. So you wander the first floor of the King's School like a lost soul, wondering if you missed something because there's no one in the southern room where he's supposed to be. Just empty chairs, empty air, and a dream of sideburns and a soul patch. What makes this even weirder is that Sergio does exist in the game's files. He's a fully voiced NPC. He can change your hairstyle, your beard, and even your hair color. He carries a badass unique straight razor, and he's one of only 2 characters in the entire game, besides Doc Mitchell and the Sync's Autodoc, who can alter the Courier's appearance post-creation. This beautician is practically a god in New Vegas with such power, and yet half the time he just doesn't spawn. No trigger activates him. Some players report that he'll only show up if you kill off most of the other kings, including the king himself, which I vetted when looking up Sergio's bugs. This solution makes 0 sense narratively, but somehow causes the game to reload the area with Sergio active. And even if you do everything right, like finish the king's questline, earn the favor, join the gang, Sergio might still be gone. Some PC players have spawned him manually using console commands, which proves he exists again, but even then, his AI is sometimes broken or his dialogue won't trigger properly.
Let's talk about one of the wildest mobility exploits in all of New Vegas: reload dashing. If you've never seen it in action, imagine blasting across the Mojave like you've strapped a makeshift propulsion system to your back, using nothing but a revolver and some ammo swapping. Here's how it works. Step 1, you need a .357 Magnum revolver, and at least 2 different ammo types for it. Make sure the .357 is at the top of your weapon list, and this part's key, have the weapons tab open last in your Pip-Boy. Now when you're ready, equip the revolver, hold forward, and then quickly switch ammo using your hotkey. And then spam the Pip-Boy button during the reload animation. While still holding forward, unequip the revolver from the weapons tab, exit the Pip-Boy, and there you have it. You rocket forward, sometimes pretty violently. You'll skip terrain, you'll clip geometry, and if you're lucky or unlucky, launching so high up you die on impact. But even that can be mitigated if you pause and save mid-air and then reload the save to cancel the fall damage. But here's where the theory comes into play. Despite sounding like a janky animation exploit, some people actually believe reload dashing was intentional. It's not officially documented, of course, but maybe it was designed to be discovered. It kind of reminds me of Halo 2's super bounces, or the obscure Mario 64 wall clips, like the glitches that feel too perfect, too repeatable to be entirely accidental. The setup is specific. The animation timing has to sync up just right, and you have to be in the right menu with the right gun, the right ammo, and the right momentum. It's not the kind of bug that just happens by accident, and it feels almost like a secret speedrun tech built in for those who look deep enough. Obsidian, of course, never confirmed it. But in a game overflowing with layered systems, overlapping scripts, and weird physics interactions, sometimes what looks like a glitch feels more like a hidden mechanic. So is reload dashing a bug, a happy accident as Bob Ross would say, or one of the best kept secrets in the Mojave? You tell me. Before Red Dead Redemption 2 had us drunkenly screaming Lenny across the saloon,
Been looking all over for you, Lenny.
New Vegas already had its own version of this now classic RPG drinking challenge. But it's so relatively hidden that most players never even knew it existed. In the You Can Depend on Me questline, there's a secret mini event tied to Cass, the owner of the Cassidy Caravans and all-around whiskey enthusiast. This can only be activated before recruiting her. The premise is simple. You're trying to buy out Cass's caravan on behalf of the Crimson Caravan Company. But she's not going to hand over the business she built from scratch. This takes finesse. It takes persuasion. It takes a barter skill of 75. If you got the numbers, Cass will propose an old-fashioned way to settle things.
You challenging me? Serious now. All right, you come here armed with whiskey. We'll make a sport of it. And none of that radioactive shit. I'm talking whiskey, not Dixon whiskey. Whiskey.
And just like that, you've triggered Cass's Whiskey Challenge, which is a secret drinking contest most people never experience, as it's being locked behind a high skill gate in a very specific dialogue tree. The rules are simple. You provide the 12 bottles of whiskey, and then you go drink for drink with Cass. The outcome's pretty cool in that it depends on your endurance stat. If your endurance is 8 or higher, you barely beat her, earning her respect and the deed. With 10 endurance, you crush her. She's stunned, humiliated, and forced to admit she's been thoroughly out-drunk. But if your endurance is 7 or less, you lose. Cass will wipe the floor with you, but she still hands over the deed. either out of pity or admiration for your effort. No matter what, the deal goes through. But the flavor text, the unique dialogue, and the entire whiskey challenge holotape that gets added to your quest log is all gated behind that 75 barter check. Miss it and you'll never know it existed, which is usually how it goes for most playthroughs. Maybe it's not as wild as the Lenny mission in Red Dead, but this game predates it by almost a decade, so it's pretty sweet to see it for its time.
No one in town knows that I know what happened to my wife. Best they never know, or the Legion will be after me next.
We all know Craig Boone, former NCR 1st Recon sniper, haunted by the guilt of sending his wife to her death. He pulled the trigger himself, hoping to spare her a worse fate at the hands of Caesar's Legion. But what if there's more to that shot? Some players believe Boone didn't just kill Carla. He used it using the Gobi campaign scout rifle, an incredibly rare, high-powered sniper rifle locked away in a footlocker at a sniping perch in the far east of the Mojave Wasteland. The theory goes like this. Boone trained in stealth and recon and wouldn't have just stood out in the open when his wife was handed over to the Legion. He'd have picked a vantage point, a sniper's nest, maybe the very one located near Cottonwood Cove, overlooking the Legion camp where she was taken. The coordinates match a field report from Camp McCarran that reads, "A sniper nest has been successfully set up near Cottonwood Cove. The position is close to the enemy camp. Upon completing the objective, get out as soon as flamingly possible." It's possible that this nest was Boone's, that this mission, unnamed in detail, was personal. If Boone used the Gobi rifle, one of the most precise scoped weapons in the game, it would explain both the emotional weight and the physical distance of the moment. He never had to see her up close, just a figure in his crosshairs. One final act of mercy, and afterward, he couldn't bear to keep it anymore, so he locks the rifle away, far from Novak, far from memory, maybe hoping no one ever finds it. But if the player does, and gives it back to him, it adds another layer of emotional closure that goes completely unspoken. Or it could be a dick move. Like, just imagine giving the sniper back to him like, "Hey Boone, something tells me you know your way around this rifle." But of course, there's doubt. That same Camp McCarran note mentions no weaponry was left at the sniper nest, just bedding and supplies. The implication is that whoever was assigned there brought their own gear and left with it. The coordinates might suggest proximity to Boone's mission, but not necessarily a link. So did Boone use the Gobi campaign rifle to kill Carla? I guess it wouldn't be the strangest thing to imagine a man like Boone bearing his past one bullet at a time.
And one more thing, we shouldn't speak again. Not until it's over.
If you've ever played New Vegas, and you likely have considering you're watching this, you probably remember needing a special power armor training perk just to wear the iconic steel suits of destruction. You grind Brotherhood quests, run errands, and finally you get certified to stomp across the Mojave in your own personal tank of a suit. But allow me to let you in on a fun fact that you may have never considered. You're the only poor bastard who needs it. Your companions? Nope. Even an aging ghoul mechanic with no formal Brotherhood training can wear a full suit of power armor without hesitation. Veronica? Sure, she was Brotherhood. But Boone? Arcade? Even random fiends can be spotted shambling around in salvaged power armor with zero explanation as to how they are not collapsing under the sheer weight of it. Turns out, not all power armor in New Vegas even counts as real power armor. Take the NCR salvage power armor, the kind seen worn by NCR heavy troopers. It doesn't require any training at all because the joint servos have been removed. It's more like heavy football padding than a mechanized exosuit. It looks intimidating, but functionally you're just sweating in a metal box with no assistive strength. And yet, that doesn't explain everything. Because when you get legit Brotherhood or Enclave power armor, suits that do have active servos and power assisted mobility, the Courier can't even move in them without training. The game simply locks you out. That is, until you complete Still in the Dark and earn the Brotherhood's trust, or finish the quest with the Enclave remnants. Then and only then do you magically know how to operate the suit, even though other characters with far less experience seem to do just fine. Was this a gameplay gate, or maybe even a balancing mechanic? It could be just an inconsistency that snuck past Q&A. Some fans argue it's a leftover from Fallout 3 where power armor training was a big deal. But in New Vegas, it starts to feel more like an arbitrary wall, especially when your 200-year-old ghoul friend casually slips into Enclave tech. At the end of the day, the Courier might be a walking arsenal, but apparently, he needs to be taught how to walk in bigger boots.
When you get to the Nellis Air Force Base in the game, you'll run across old Pete at the Boomer Museum, where he'll give you a little tour on the Boomer's past. During his dialogue options, you'll get the option to ask him how the howitzers ended up on the Air Force base. I'm not sure why we ask this, honestly. I'm not a gun expert, so I'm sure someone in the comments could explain, but I did do some slight research, and howitzers can definitely target aerial objects. Mostly slow moving stuff, but it is possible. So wouldn't howitzers be a thing on an Air Force base? I don't know. Anyways, that's not what this is about. I want you to listen to his response.
You're right, they weren't here when we discovered Nellis. We found the guns at a huge weapon depot called Area 2, many miles from here.
Did you catch it? This is the only mention of it in the entire game, Area 2. A lot of people at first hearing this assume that this might be a reference to Area 51, which I don't blame you. I thought the same thing, and it is odd that we never do get mentions of any Area 51 in the entire game. And that's like a big piece of Nevada's history. But Area 2 is also mentioned one more time briefly outside of the game. In the Fallout New Vegas official game guide, it states, 50 years ago, a group of Fallout 34's dissidents struck out on their own and started using Nellis as a base. Over a long period of time, they eventually decided to call Nellis their home. They learned a great deal of information from the records at Nellis and used that information to open the weapons storehouses at currently unknown locations called Area 2 and the Hawthorne Army Depot. The result of their efforts was an enormous stockpile of heavy ordnance, artillery, and small nuclear weapons. So what even is Area 2? If you've ever looked into the Nevada test site, or what's now called the Nevada National Security Site, you might have come across something called Area 2. It's about 65 miles northwest of Las Vegas and was one of the key zones used during the Cold War for US nuclear weapons testing. In fact, 144 nuclear tests happened right there, most of them above ground, back in the 50s and early 60s before the US signed a treaty to stop atmospheric detonations. The place is still scarred and has craters from those explosions, and some of them are even visible today. Nowadays, Area 2 isn't actually used for any nuclear tests anymore, but it still sees activity mostly for national security experiments, emergency response training, and stuff that's, let's just say, still very classified. So while it's not as famous as Area 51, Area 2 does have its own explosive history. The place is not reachable in the game, but it's still pretty cool to hear about it. So once again guys, this is not a reference to Area 51, but it is a reference to the real life Area 2.
If you watched our other Fallout New Vegas Icebergs, then you've already heard why the devs allegedly chose ending game slides and didn't allow players to go back into the Mojave and continue to play a post-game sequence. But if you haven't watched it, just know that I fully believe ending slides were chosen due to developmental time constraints. I mean, there's entire sections of Wasteland you can explore outside game boundaries simply because the devs never got to it. So in my opinion, ending slides were the path of least resistance to get the game published. But for the sake of this video, and what you may not have known, is that there are 83 ending slides. These can really be broken down to the Dead Money ending slides, the original game's endgame narrations, Honest Hearts ending slides, Lonesome Road, and finally the Old World Blues ending slides. The more I talk about this, the more I'm tempted to do an entire video on every ending in New Vegas. But for now, just know you likely haven't seen all 83 slides, so I hope you find a new one while watching this vid.
There's a ton of cut content in Fallout New Vegas, but few lost stories are as intriguing or as mysterious as the one involving Abe and Monte, two ghouls that were originally tied to Veronica's backstory. Let's start with Abe, also known as Abraham. In the early stages of development, Abe was a ghoul who played a major role in Veronica's personal questline. According to what we know from design docs and cut dialogue, he was presumed dead during a retreat, possibly during some Brotherhood operation. But instead of dying, he survived and ended up healing in a mysterious place called the Crater. Most people think this is just an early name for Big Mountain. From there, Abe traveled north, and that's where it gets even more interesting. Abe was actually a proto-version of Father Elijah, the antagonist from Dead Money and Veronica's former mentor. But in this early draft, he was envisioned as a ghoul. Over time, the devs dropped the ghoul angle and reshaped him into the twisted, power-hungry elder that we know today. Then there's Monte, another ghoul with a role in this scrap storyline. The Courier was supposed to meet Monte during a quest that had some very different stakes from what we see in the final game. You'd have to either kill him or trap him in a subway tunnel to recover something called an accelerator. Inside the accelerator was a farewell message meant for Veronica. The whole quest would have been about Veronica digging into her past, possibly uncovering more about her family or her time before the Brotherhood. The message from Abe, the mission to recover the accelerator, and the encounter with Monte were all set to be part of a personal journey. Sadly, all of this was cut and replaced with Father Elijah's storyline, with the updated dialogue to match. Well, maybe it's not sad. The Father Elijah storyline is still pretty great. But it's fascinating to think about what it could have been. Instead of Elijah just showing up in Dead Money, we might have met his earlier ghoul version in the base game. We might have helped Veronica find closure, or even uncover secrets that the Brotherhood wanted buried. So while Abe and Monte never made it into the final cut of New Vegas, their existence shows just how many branching paths the developers considered, and how the game's characters, especially Veronica and Elijah, evolved into what we see today. Who knows, maybe in some alternate timeline, Abe the Ghoul is still out there wandering the waste with secrets only Veronica would understand. So let's talk about Stripe. No, not the one from Gremlins, though that is kind of the whole joke. I'm talking about Stripe, the miniature Deathclaw hiding out in Old World Blues, and easily one of the most hilarious and terrifying surprises waiting just for you. If you head over to Higgs Village, specifically behind House 103, you'll spot a cute little doghouse, and right next to it is a bone, a bowl, and what looks like a harmless backyard setup. This is where Stripe lives. At first, Stripe seems like a joke. He's a tiny Deathclaw. Seriously, this thing is like the size of a common dog. But don't let his size fool you. The moment you get too close, Stripe bursts out of the doghouse like a landmine with claws. He's small, he's fast, and he hits like a truck. Despite being scaled down, Stripe is not a pushover. He's technically an alpha male Deathclaw, just biologically miniaturized for science reasons that we can safely assume were very, very unethical. His health sits somewhere between a normal alpha and the legendary Deathclaw, and he deals 250 damage per hit with his melee attacks. He can even leap at you like a full-size Deathclaw, but because he's smaller, the range is short. But the pain is not. Funny thing is, he'll only chase you as far as the fountain in the center of Higgs Village. This is actually another reference to his origin, Stripe from the Gremlins movie, who dies in the fountain in the final act. Even the chicken leg near his doghouse is a nod to the Gremlins. Oh, and the letters on the doghouse originally spelled Gabe, which is the name of another creature from the DLC. But in this encounter, someone ripped the letters off and rearranged them to spell out Stripe. I do want to point out that he is also a Wild Wasteland trait exclusive. I've said it once, and I'll say it again. Just take the trait. Anyways, Stripe might be pint-sized, but he's pound for pound one of the most dangerous Easter eggs in the Mojave, and easily one of the funniest what the hell moments in New Vegas. Speaking about Higgs Village, did you know that you can find Liberty Prime there? Okay, that's pretty clickbaity, but here he is in all his glory behind none other than Mr. House himself. I know you're already heading to the comments to start typing away that clearly his legs when compared to House show that he can't be Liberty Prime because he's way smaller. This is true, but for those that don't know, House was a tech mogul, founder, president, and the mind behind R.O.U.S Industries, one of the most powerful technology companies in pre-war America. This is the same R.O.U.S that created the Protectrons, Terminals, Pit-Boys, and even had ties to Vault-Tec. House was a genius, and his influence stretched across nearly every major piece of tech in the Fallout universe, and presumably even Liberty Prime itself. Several sources, including terminals and in-game dialogue, suggest that R.O.U.S was once contracted by the US military to help with various defense technologies. We know that Mr. House, as R.O.U.S CEO, had direct connections to the Department of Defense and was even involved in defense contracts tied to national security. His company was developing advanced robotics and AIs years before the war ended. If the military wanted help designing or automating a skyscraper-sized warbot, Mr. House would have been on the short list of people they'd call. House explicitly mentions that if the war had gone on just another decade, he would have deployed an army of robotic soldiers and repelled the Chinese invasion single-handedly, which sounds a lot like Liberty Prime's mission. So while the game never directly confirms Mr. House's role in Liberty Prime's construction, the timeline, his government ties, his obsession with robotics, and the nature of Prime's design all strongly suggest that he either contributed technology, schematics, or design influence to the program. This all leads me back to the photo. Yes, this is clearly not the Liberty Prime that we know and love. It's far too small in scale, but this could most definitely be a prototype of Liberty Prime. Maybe House started small and worked his way up. This would be the most likely scenario in my head. We don't see any other robots in the series that look quite like this, except for maybe the humanoid robots in Fallout Tactics. But that game isn't confirmed canon all the way, so who knows. Regardless, what do you guys think? Is it Prime or something else?
Buried deep in the game files of New Vegas is a developer test character with one of the more interesting semi-Roman inspired names in the Mojave, but it's not a typo or a mod. Surprisingly, it's real and it's pronounced Testacles, not to be mistaken for Testacles, which is a completely different NPC in the game. Kidding. Testacles is what's known as a debug NPC, a character placed in a developer test cell used internally to tweak variables, trigger quest flags, and test outcomes during development. Think of this guy as a living cheat menu, with a centurion's body and a god's ability to warp reality. If you speak to him, he can alter your reputation with nearly every faction in the game. He can also spawn wrecks on command, skip or modify major quests, and rewrite aspects of your playthrough like he's editing the source code. He shares a model with Bill the Tax Collector, who we covered in a different iceberg, but he's basically another obscure testing NPC, but Testacles himself never appears during normal gameplay. You have to manually spawn him in using this console command. Do that, and suddenly this toga-wearing demigod drops into the desert like a roaming glitch genie ready to rewrite the world at your command. And yes, his name is actually a callback to another Black Isle Obsidian classic, Planescape Torment, where a debug character with the exact name served a similar purpose. That game had testicles, this one had Testacles. It's a developer legacy at this point, and kind of like an inside joke passed down across RPG generations like a sacred torch. But let's be honest, only Obsidian would put something this strange yet powerful and unapologetically named into their game and just never explain it. You don't simply find Testacles, you summon him. This one is quick and simple, and really it's for all the PC players out there. If you're a console gamer, it won't be anything to get hyped about, but just know that there are console commands that allows PC players to hack the game in quirky ways. Whether that's spawning an NPC, leveling up automatically, or in this case, getting your own invisibility cloak. Alright, I'm overselling it. It isn't an invisibility cloak per se, but if you console command T-detect, it allows you to go invisible unbeknownst to NPCs. So the age-old question goes, if you could have any type of superpower, what would it be? For me, I'm personally choosing teleportation, but a strong second is to go invisible. And an even stronger third is to go invisible in the Mojave Wasteland. Think of all the havoc you could wreak, or all the good you could do. But I don't know, invisibility seems like it's more for nefarious purposes like robbing and stealing than anything else.
This one is heavily debated to this day, so don't shoot the messenger, alright? I don't know what the hell I'm talking about here as far as dams go. I'm no dam expert. Basically, there are those that say New Vegas has a major plot hole concerning the Hoover Dam and the fact that the NCR was able to restore it in a few months according to the game. So let's go over a few reasons why it might not work. For starters, the infrastructure would have suffered serious degradation over time. Hoover Dam was constructed in the 1930s, and by the time of the Great War in 2077, it had already been operating for over 140 years. After the bombs fell, maintenance likely came to a halt, and in the 200 years since, there's been no consistent upkeep. Without regular inspections, lubrication, and replacement of worn parts, critical components like turbines, valves, and control systems would have corroded, jammed, or failed outright. Simply put, massive hydroelectrical installations don't survive centuries of neglect without breaking down. There's also the issue of the electromagnetic pulse (EMP) damage. Fallout's version of the Great War included nuclear detonations across the globe, and high-altitude explosions would have unleashed EMPs that fried unshielded electronics over wide areas. Unless Hoover Dam's control systems were specifically hardened against EMPs, and there's no clear evidence they were, then much of its sensitive electronic infrastructure would have been rendered inoperable within seconds of the war starting. Transformers, relays, circuit boards, everything could have been wiped out. Even assuming the hardware remained physically intact, you'd still need highly trained personnel to run it. Hoover Dam isn't just a big plug you can pull on and off. It takes engineers, technicians, and a deep understanding of hydroelectric systems to get it back online. That kind of knowledge would have been incredibly rare in the post-apocalyptic world, especially in the early years. Any effort by the NCR to restore the dam's functionality would have required massive resources, scavenged parts, old world schematics, and a team of people who actually knew how to interpret them. That's a pretty tall order for a society still re-establishing basic infrastructure. Environmental factors also come into play. The Hoover Dam relies on the flow of the Colorado River, and it's unclear how stable or consistent that flow would be 200 years after a global nuclear war. Fallout and climate change could have altered weather patterns, dried up parts of the river, or made the water radioactive. Sediment buildup might have clogged intakes, or upstream collapses could have disrupted the dam's operation entirely. Without modern tools to manage the river's flow, Hoover Dam's output would likely be unstable or minimal. And if the dam was flooded, which would be the most likely scenario, pumping out all of that water would be another tremendous effort. Now in the dam's defense, the dam is equipped with shutoff valves, which likely would have closed automatically in the event of an emergency. This would have offered some protection to the turbines and helped prevent debris from getting too deep into the system if the trash screens failed. To get the dam operational again, crews would first need to clean out the intake area, replace the damaged trash screens, and inspect and repair the shutoff valve mechanisms. The turbines themselves would need a thorough inspection and likely repairs, as would the transformers. On top of that, the power lines connected to the dam would need to be replaced. The spillways, which are responsible for managing overflow and holding back massive amounts of water over the past 2 centuries, would also require inspection and possibly major renovations. All that said, restoring the dam wouldn't be impossible, especially with the manpower and resources that the NCR can bring to bear. They've got access to the Enclave remnants, help from the followers of the Apocalypse, and maybe even assistance from Brotherhood defectors. And if you factor in Mr. House, who has vested interest in getting the dam's power flowing for his own goals, the idea of getting it up and running again starts to seem a lot more realistic. In essence, there are a lot of science fiction explanations through all of the Fallout games for a lot of wilder things than this dam, so I wouldn't put too much weight into it really. But also, I guess we'll find out in the show if it's still running or not.
In a game packed with power players like the NCR, Caesar's Legion, the Brotherhood of Steel, it's easy to forget about the little guys. But hiding out in the crumbling Monte Carlo suites near Westside is one of the Mojave's most obscure raider gangs known as the Scorpions. They're not legends by any stretch, and they're not even good at what they do. They're a low-level gang of small-time chem dealers and wannabe tough guys barely scraping by the edge of fiend territory, and usually getting their asses kicked when the two cross paths. They operate out of a total shit hotel, and if you bother to visit, you'll find them armed with 10mm pistols, sawed-off shotguns, and switchblades. Maybe even a ripper if someone's feeling bold. This is the kind of gang you mow down in seconds and forget you ever saw, but there is more to them than meets the eye. Or at least there was more to them at some point, which is why they're being mentioned right now. Their leader, Yvette, was meant to be more than just another raider boss. Cut content in the game files reveals that she was supposed to give the player a small unmarked quest. The mission? Help the Scorpions get a steady supply of ammo from the NCR quartermaster at Camp McCarran. One of the leftover assets from the scrapped quest is a note titled Ammo for the Scorpions, which reads the following. That's basically it. The Scorpion gang was likely to play a slightly bigger role in the Wasteland, which makes sense for the sole fact they're overnamed raiders. So although it would have been cool to see them play a bigger role to add to the lore, our best bet is seeing them in Fallout Season 2, if they even whisper their name on screen.
Was a prospector until I decided to settle here to get away from the NCR. Now we'll just take it easy and help out with the Brahmin and Bighorner.
Buried in the deepest layers of our game's modding madness lies one of the most absurd and beloved community in-jokes of all time. The Easy Pete migration. It all started with the chaotic Jerma 985 video where he spawned dozens of Easy Petes. Yes, that Easy Pete, the old dynamite hoarder from Good Springs. Without any prompts, these clone Petes didn't just stand around or explode in a fit of AI confusion. They simply walked. One by one, the Easy Petes began migrating. Not by car, not by horse, but by on foot across the Mojave, embarking on a treacherous journey all the way back to their true home. Good Springs. These Petes were likely dodging death claws, super mutants, and the horrors of the wasteland. They marched with uncanny purpose, all together peacefully inside Pete's tiny shack like migrating birds returning for the winter. What makes this hilarious and weirdly wholesome is that it wasn't just random NPC behavior. Easy Pete's AI is hard-coded to return to his house if displaced, even from the other side of the map. That means no matter where you drop him, even smack in the middle of Vegas Strip, his cowboy heart will always lead him home. The Easy Pete migration became an unexpected symbol of loyalty, perseverance, and just how bizarre Fallout sandbox can get. It's the kind of absurdity that only happens when a game's systems are robust enough to support it and a community with a big enough love for the game to test it.
Mick and Ralph are known to bend the rules in their favor. We know that they have no problem skewing their moral compasses for the right price. I mean, they do sell fakes to make your way into New Vegas, but that might not be the worst part. A fan theory kind of popped up that Mick and Ralph might not have originated in New Vegas, but instead came from the pits. More specifically, the actual pit from Fallout 3. I'm not saying we have a lot of evidence to go off of here. In fact, we only have one piece of evidence and it's not that strong, to be honest. On the wall above Mick's secret inventory, there's an infiltrator rifle sitting behind the counter at Mick and Ralph's. Now, if you're like me, your first thought is probably, wait, why is a pit exclusive weapon all the way out in the Mojave? It's supposed to be used by the Raiders in Pittsburgh, not here in a shop next to a guy pushing fake passports and rocket souvenirs. My first thought is that the infiltrator is technically just a heavily modified R91 assault rifle. Silencer, scope, bigger mag, no stock. So yeah, it's rare, but not impossible for it to show up outside of the pit. There are several ways we can conclude this. One, Mick and Ralph came from the East either as ex-slavers or slaves or whatever. Somehow they got their hands on an infiltrator rifle that is exclusive to the pit area so far as we know, and then they brought it out west. It does seem like this whole row of guns is a trophy section that Mick keeps on display. Maybe he was proud of his slaver past, or maybe he's proud that he took down a slaver and kept his gun. Who knows? Option number 2, and I think the most likely one, is that someone brought in the rifle and traded it. Because, wouldn't you know, these guys are in fact traders. Wild concept. Traveling from coast to coast isn't completely unheard of, so it's somewhat feasible a rifle could have found its way to the Mojave. Maybe Mick thought it was a cool piece he's never seen before and added it to the collection. But what do you guys think? Are these two hiding a darker past?
Southeast of Calville Bay, just east of the scavenger platform, lies a half-forgotten mystery. Lake Mead Cave is quietly sitting under the still waters of Lake Mead. The entrance to this place is easy to miss as it's fully underwater, tucked beneath a large rocky ledge. Atop that ledge is a small fishing boat capsized and partially submerged, its hull cracked like a tombstone. And below on the lake bed, you'll find 4 gore bags, bloody, torn, and jammed full of mutilated body parts, a few frag grenades, and sometimes scattered ammo. They're pressed up against the side of the boat like they were dumped in a hurry. Nearby are scattered suitcases, pre-war money, and broken car parts. It feels like a story happened here, and it likely did since in real life, even several years after New Vegas was released, human remains were found in Lake Mead, likely stemming from the mob ties of the old city. So what is the point of Lake Mead Cave? In gameplay terms, practically nothing. The cave might tie into Ranger Station Guardian, but aside from that, this location on the old Pip-Boy doesn't really serve a significant purpose, which is a little weird and why the Lake Mead Cave made it on the list in the first place. In the end, Lake Mead Cave is mostly environmental storytelling. Seriously guys, there's literally no quest markers or any true significance to this location in general, so let me know if you find something that says otherwise. If you want to get deep, I guess it's a perfect example of Obsidian's design philosophy, where not every mystery needs a resolution. Sometimes the unanswered questions are what make the world feel real. Anyway, the next time you're skimming across the surface of Lake Mead, take a dive, just don't expect answers. Just murky old bones and a silence that doesn't quite feel empty.
Let's talk about one of the creepiest characters in Fallout you've never actually met, a figure known only as the Principal. He's not a boss, he's not in any cutscene, he doesn't have a model, a voice, or even a quest tied to his name. But if you dig into the lore during Honest Hearts, you'll find him. And what you learn is haunting. In the year 2123, 24 children escaped from a mysterious place known only as the School. No one knows exactly what it was. A vault, a re-education facility, maybe a failed pre-war institution warped by the wasteland. But what we do know is this. It was bad enough that the kids risked everything to flee into the wilds of Zion Canyon. And wherever they came from, they brought with them stories. Not of super mutants and raiders, but a man known as the Principal. To the children, he wasn't just a leader, he was a boogeyman. A figure so terrifying that they would tell the younger ones, if you don't behave, the Principal will come and get you. That's the level of fear this guy instilled in them. Randall Clark, the legendary survivalist of Zion, overheard the kids' stories about this figure while secretly watching over them. And in his journal he writes, 24 of them, half boys, half girls. Youngest is 8 maybe, oldest 13 to 14. dirty and scrawny, been on foot a long time, children's crusade, struck camp on nearly the same spot as Los Mexicanos, 30 years and a lifetime ago. I've spent 2 nights listening to them, English literate. One of them reads stories while the little ones fall asleep. They escape some place called the school, but can't figure out where it was. When they want a little one to behave, they tell him to stop or the principal will get you. Principal better not show up or I'll blow his goddamn head off. I can still shoot straight. Clark was no stranger to death. He fought through the Great War, survived years alone, and faced everything from raiders to starvation. So when a hardened, broken man like him reacts that way, you know this principal guy must have been truly horrifying. Now, after Old World Blues came out, some fans thought they'd cracked the case. They pointed to Dr. Boris and the X8 test facility, which ran brutal experiments on school children before the war. It fit the term the school. The abuse and the twisted science all lined up. Could Boris have been the principal? Sadly, no. Fallout writer Chris Avalon stepped in and confirmed on social media that it wasn't the case, though in his words, it would have been cool. So as of now, the principal truly remains unknown. So the next time you're wandering Zion, remember somewhere out there, 24 children once ran from a place so terrible that a man with no name became their nightmare. The principal. No face, no voice, just fear. I'll make this one quick because there's not really much here besides a singular holotape. But yes, there are snuff tapes in Fallout New Vegas. Sort of. Obviously, it's not something you can watch in the game. It's actually used as part of a plot line for the Omertas during the quest How Little We Know. Basically, you find them and use them for blackmail against Clandon. The tape's transcripts go like this. These tapes contain horrific sounds of murder and violence. You hear Clandon engaging in violence with women, and then hear the sounds of visceral and violent being carried out. Sorry, I had to not say and blur some specific things because that's just how YouTube works. But I'm sure you get the picture. It's pretty dark for even Fallout standards. You'd be hard pressed to find something else worse in the game, except for maybe the coyotes, which we covered in one of the other icebergs. It's a wild thing to stumble across and read, and I don't think a lot of people ever actually end up seeing it.
Some players genuinely believe the Courier from Fallout New Vegas is the Lone Wanderer from Fallout 3, not a descendant and not a spiritual successor, but the same person. And here's the argument. Fallout New Vegas takes place only a few years after Fallout 3. The Lone Wanderer has lost everything. His father, his childhood home in Vault 101, his connections. Sure, he saved the capital wasteland and became the so-called hero of the wastes. But emotionally, it was hollow, maybe even lonely. The Lone Wanderer has no ties left. So what does a grief-stricken hero do? He leaves and heads west and tries to start over. He ditches the Pip-Boy, takes up menial work as a courier, and slowly lets go of who he used to be. That Pip-Boy was a constant reminder of his past, and without it, he could become someone new. The final nail in the coffin would be a bullet to the brain in the Mojave, which is oddly convenient, right? I mean, a total memory reset is a great alibi. And just like that, the Lone Wanderer becomes the Courier, another drifter trying to find meaning in the chaos of the wasteland. A new beginning and a new legend is born. But here's the counterpoint, and it's a strong one. The Courier doesn't actually have amnesia. That's a common misconception. He remembers his past to different degrees as the Courier mentions places like Montana and makes offhand remarks about jobs he's done. Oh, and not to mention that he has a long-standing rivalry with this guy that predates the events of the game. As for the Divide, he doesn't remember it because it was just another delivery hub, not because his brain got wiped like some old hard drive. And how about that Pip-Boy? If the Courier was the Lone Wanderer, where's his wrist-mounted legacy? The device that carried Project Purity logs, vault tech schematics, and records of every mutant he vaporized in DC. It's gone, and not even mentioned, and that thing's not exactly easy to misplace. Plus, New Vegas lets you customize the Courier's age. If you want to be 45 or 35, then go for it. But the Lone Wanderer was technically born in 2258, making him 19 in Fallout 3 and only 22 by the time New Vegas rolls around. Not exactly a seasoned courier with a storied past. Finally, there's the Vault 13 Canteen. That's the nod Obsidian gave us, not to Fallout 3, but to Fallout 1 and 2. The implication here, allegedly, is that the Courier is more likely descended from the Vault Dweller or Chosen One, not the Lone Wanderer. But what do you think? Is that a stretch? So while it's a poetic theory, the idea of a broken hero reinventing himself in a new land, the evidence just doesn't line up. Still, in the Fallout universe, identity is always a little fluid, and sometimes the myths we tell ourselves are more powerful than the truth. I wish we could play the Big Iron ballad that tells a story of an Arizona Ranger's confrontation with a notorious outlaw named Texas Red, but I also don't want to get a copyright strike. The song describes a tense showdown in a specific town where the Ranger, armed with his Big Iron, which is a large revolver, faces off against the feared Texas Red. Now, the rumor goes that Big Iron was written for New Vegas, but a basic history lesson would show that Big Iron was literally made before 1960 on an album called Gunfighter Ballads and Trail Songs. With an album with a name such as that, I don't think we can be too surprised to find one of its songs make its way into the game. So while Big Iron was not written specifically for Fallout New Vegas because it predates the game by half a century, its inclusion in the game significantly contributed to its resurgence in popularity and cemented its status as a memorable, iconic Western song. I think we can put this rumor to rest, but I will leave us with a fun fact. An additional song was supposed to be played on Radio New Vegas and Mojave Music Radio, but was never added. So Big Iron was unintentionally bugged to play 2 more times than any other song, and it can even be played twice on the radio in a row. It's fine by me though because Big Iron is goated. Thanks for watching our 3rd complete Fallout New Vegas Iceberg. We hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't already, consider subbing and giving our other icebergs a watch as we cover Fallout 3, Fallout 4, and have plans for future Elder Scrolls icebergs as well. Remember guys, enjoyed time is never wasted time, and we'll see you in the next.
Happy trails, partner.